This is Central Texas Living with Ann Harder.
It is a joy to welcome to the podcast today Jacob Sherwin, who is from the North Texas area, came to Baylor, and has a master's degree in linguistics. And it's just a delight to get to meet you and get to hear a little bit about your story.
Well, thank you for having me, Ann. It's a great pleasure.
So you were born in the Denton area, and tell me about your childhood.
Well, during my childhood, I had great Christian parents growing up. I was very thankful and very blessed to have that. We went to church every Sunday, and I always remember church being a part of my life. And it led up to me accepting Christ when I was 13. And after residing in Denton for the time, we went to McKinney, where I spent all of my grade school years until I got accepted to Baylor and moved down here. Family actually followed me during my sophomore year at Baylor. So I was fortunate to live in the dorm for 2 years straight. Then I was brought home, even though they said, this is really just a place for you to live and sleep pretty much.
Yeah.
You don't have to stay here all the time. But I was very thankful for childhood and even thankful for adulthood now.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so you have a passion, and that's to bring awareness to autism. So tell me about your walk with the autism spectrum.
Well, I was actually diagnosed rather early. I was 8, and it was in second grade. My second grade teacher started to notice I had some weird trends, such as random meltdowns in class. Students would end up pushing me to my limit, not even knowing, and I didn't know why I was even upset. I had no reasonable explanation. So went through most of grade school until 5th grade came about. And after I had been diagnosed, I realized, okay, I'm having to go out of the classroom more than once or twice a day. Why is this? And I asked my mom, back in 5th grade, and she said, honey, you have autism. So I was a little concerned about what that was. I didn't really hurt or hit like a brick at all. It was just rather curious, like, okay, that explains a lot. And I had heard of people with autism and Down syndrome, people with other disabilities, but I saw them as normal people, just different like everybody else. So went through all of my grade school years, and to be honest, I never had any true friends. There's no friends that I have right now that I can even still call friends that I had made, except for maybe 2 people. And that was after I got to senior year of high school. Of course, the acquaintanceships were very great. I was very grateful for those. And every friendship I tried and attempted, I never could get a firm grasp on it. I either ended up getting hurt, left it out of a gathering, just figuring out why is this happening. And there were even times where I asked God, why are you bringing this to me? And it took me until my senior year of high school. The church I was attending actually welcomed seniors to give a small sermonette of where God is leading them. And I stood there with the other seniors in front of the congregation and used Joshua 1:9. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be terrified or discouraged, for I am with you wherever you go, as God is telling Joshua before he leads the Israelites. So I used that verse in mind, and I told the whole church about my story, about where he was leading me. Told everyone, I have this disability, but God has shown me to use it as a simple challenge that everyone encounters every day. That even though it's a standardized disability, according to the Diagnostic Statistic Manual, it's still a challenge that everyone else has. We all have our quirks. We are OCD. We're several different things. But that's
easily distracted. I mean, there's all kinds of things.
But that's what makes us unique. And so I live right now in the idea of, okay, what challenges am I going to have today? Am I going to be ready for them? How am I going to approach it? Am I going to let it keep me down? Or am I going to do something about it? For example, I can cower in my room all day, not talk to anybody, and I won't have any friends. And it was God telling me through grade school years, you need to do something. You can't just have people come to you or expect that everything's going to be perfect. Because I need to realize that it's going to be imperfect during our time here on earth. And God has used this autism as a weakness to humble me in many ways. And most people ask me nowadays, why are you so quiet? I say, because it's better to listen, in my opinion, than to really say something, because some people may not like what I have to say because it may be too random. I'm still working on that because we get so distracted, and anything that pops in our head, people with my disability, we think we have to say it all of a sudden. So overall, I've been very grateful. I'm on the high functioning end of the spectrum. And as far as encountering anybody with it, still treat them like a regular individual and do my best to be a friend, be an acquaintance to them.
Mm-hmm.
And even if they're high functioning like me and I see challenges that they've gone through, both that I've gone through that they have right now, even at my age, depending on how the strength of the relationship is, I remind them, okay, you have this challenge. You're a Christian, right? They usually say yes. I say, what are you going to do about it? If they're not believers, I say, so what have you got going on today? How can you overcome this? What is your most uncomfortable feeling? So it's better to push the limits to where you're comfortable and realize, okay, here are my limits. I work better next time. It's always trial and error. People like me think, why is it not perfect all the time? It's always trial and error because we have to realize that nothing's going to be a set system, especially in creation. Our minds think systematically. So we have to realize it's not going to be that way. Prepare yourself for that.
High functioning is the term you used in your diagnosis. Was there a specific diagnosis that you received on, when you were a child?
Yes, this was back before the recent Diagnostic Statistic Manual came out with the American Psychology Association. Back then, it was classified as simple Asperger's syndrome, which is no longer on the spectrum, so they just call it high-functioning autism.
Really? So Asperger's is not really considered?
It goes back and forth. I've heard many differing opinions. Psychology is a unique field in that area. Some people say, oh, it's this. I'll say this overall, it's made a huge progression from the old derogatory term, which I'm not going to use,
right, to
what it is now, simple high-functioning autism, which I'm grateful for. I just wish Asperger's syndrome would still be a thing. Just like we have Down syndrome. That's not classified as anything other than that, except maybe trisomy, whatever the name is.
Are there certain things that you're extra good at? Like remembering things or, I have had encounters with individuals with Asperger's. I mean, that's how he described it. And he could tell you every school mascot of every school in the state of Texas.
Wow.
I mean, and would remember in minute detail things that had happened, almost to his detriment, because then he would kind of ruminate on things. He had a hard time putting things away, in the past. And are there any specific things like that you're kind of blessed with, really, in a way? It's something different and unique?
Oh, yes. My gift to learn languages is one of those. My second language right now is French, even though I've never been officially tested of what my fluency is except by a faculty member during grad school. But I'm able to learn languages well. I'm still working on Russian as my third one, and I can understand just a tiny little bit of Spanish with the French knowledge that I know, because
the Romance languages all kind of weave together.
Yes.
Like Italian will be a little bit, kind of like that as well, I guess.
We can thank Latin for that. And I'm also good at instruments. I can pick up almost every instrument, not every instrument actually, certain instruments after I've studied them a little bit, and I can try to play something on them. It takes time. I can read sheet music really well. To this day, I can say I've played 5 different instruments. So the cello I tried for a little bit. I was a percussionist in high school. I can play the piano. I am learning the bagpipes.
Really?
And I took a semester of organ at Baylor.
Wow. Oh, that's great. Let's talk about your Baylor experience. How would you typify it as a student there?
I would say it was full of challenging yet faith, spiritual giving experiences. I was very blessed to have great professors that took interest in every student, who challenged them enough that they wanted to see their best. They let students find their limits and what they could excel in as well. Plus, the professors made themselves very available and also open to helping you out, as long as you actually showed that you were trying, as long as you showed that you wanted help, showing you were lost, and even to the point of if you had a bad day or were depressed that you didn't get a good grade on a test, they were very open to counseling you, saying you have other opportunities to help you out. So the amount of mercy and the grace of the Holy Spirit through these professors was very rewarding, and I loved that. Plus, my friends, my colleagues were great mentors as well to me. one-on-one and actually became mentor to some of them too. And it helped make me be a better and nicer person, even though everyone's going to have the bad days. It's not going to be perfect, but had to train my brain to say, okay, what's going to happen today? How can I be nice? How can I not get mad if somebody says a opinion that's contradictory to mine or the general population in the course?
You want to bring attention to autism, though.
Mm-hmm.
And what is the one thing you think people just absolutely don't understand about the autism spectrum?
Well, about that, we're not broken. People would think that we're broken. I've been told by some people that after I've told them about my challenge, it's usually people that I trust, that I come to establish a connection with. I know their heart. I've heard their story. And it's usually whenever I tell them just to show that God has done something in me, that he can do something in them as well. It's to be an encouragement. The biggest thing that's a hindrance that people have the impression of is there's a stigmata. There's a stigma that's created whenever you tell someone that. So they see you differently. So they can't see past that. And I say, why can't you see past that and see what God has done in me? And someone even told me, why do you have to tell people all the time? I go,
yeah, because nobody would know by looking at you that there's anything.
Right. And I just do it as an encouragement, really, not to say I'm special. I deserve this. No, by no means. We're not earned any privilege like that. And another thing is people confuse the disability with schizophrenia. Oh. Yes, we sometimes see images in our minds and such. The difference I see is we don't have the seizures. And it's not common that we hear random people talking to us. It may be in dreams, but as far as like in person, it's very rare that ever happens.
It's time for us to kind of wrap things up, but I want to get to know you a little bit better by asking you some questions and talk about random things. So you can be as random as you want to be with this. But this is a little questionnaire that was on the late great James Lipton's show Inside the Actor's Studio, and so it's just sort of questions to get inside your head a little bit. What's your favorite word?
What is my favorite word? I would have to say it's a German word. It's Vergangenheitsbewältigung, which
okay,
it's about 20 yay characters long.
Yeah.
And
what does it mean though?
Well, it's actually a word that comes from the lament had after the Holocaust. It means dwelling on the past events with regret and thinking, okay, there's going to be a better life later. And that's what's great about language. There's some words in some languages that cannot be explained with one word in English. So you have to understand the cultural context behind it.
And thankfully German provides that for us in this case. What's your least favorite word?
Well, out of all the curse words, one that isn't one, I would probably have to say, there's no big word that actually grinds my gears.
Okay.
So I have to say there's no answer to that one.
All right, there you go. What sound do you love the best?
I enjoy the sound of an organ. Whether it's in church or concert hall, I like to, but this was what I did in France when I lived there for 4 months studying abroad. I'd go by the cathedral, I'd hear the organ playing, I'd go sit there after class, listen, because whenever I hear music, I can close my eyes and sometimes I see scenes or colors, so a little bit of synesthesia almost.
Excellent. What sound do you not like?
I don't like sudden sounds, things that startle, such as a loud bang or even static. If a sound is constant and is ongoing and is rather high-pitched or too low, it just makes me feel very sensitive. And usually, as the autism disability shows, if something doesn't go our way or it bothers us, we have to remove ourselves from the situation, which I've had to do before. We all try not to make a scene, but we just excuse ourselves and calm ourselves down after that.
Good. What do you want to hear God say to you when you enter the pearly gates?
When I enter the pearly gates, as he told David, no, I forgot who he told it to, but the one whom he'd say, "Well done, my good and faithful servant. welcome home.
Excellent. Oh, Jacob, it's been a delight to get to visit with you and to hear your heart about the world of autism, where you find yourself. But it's just such a blessing to me to hear how you've overcome challenges and want to help people understand.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much, and it's been a pleasure to be interviewed and just share my heart. I appreciate you having me.
TIAA is on a mission. Why? Because 54% of Black Americans don't have enough savings to retire. So in collaboration with big-name artists like Wyclef Jean, TIAA released Paper Right, new music inspiring a new financial future. With 100% of streaming sales going to a nonprofit that teaches students how to invest. Stream Paper Right now and help close the gap.
What's the one thing people always say they wish they still had after a disaster or fire? Photographs. Revision Photo Restoration is dedicated to helping preserve and restore your memories. Take advantage of this extra time you have at home to go through those old boxes of photos. If you're feeling overwhelmed by the process, follow them on Pinterest for organizational tips and tricks for old photos. They have on-site fire and weatherproof storage facilities to ensure the safety of your images, so you don't have to ship off all your memories to a larger company. Revision can handle everything from slides and negatives to film and prints. Revision Photo Restoration is local to Waco and located at 2001 Franklin Avenue. Call 254-297-9754 for an appointment or instructions on how to send in files digitally. Revision Photo Restoration. Check them out on Instagram at Revision Photo.
Waco. I am your host, Debbie, here to help you get in the know about Waco. So you may be asking yourself, why am I here? I'm here to be your tour guide through Waco. I'm here to tell you all the goings-on in and around Waco. I'm going to give you the 411 on what's happening, what's going on, and what events you should go to. This is your host, Debbie, signing off. Now that you know, go. Just go, Waco.
Are going on a run.
If you're a fan of motorsports, you can be a part of the inaugural run of a Grand Prix right here in Central Texas. It's the Groesbeck Grand Prix, set for this coming September. And joining me now, Michael Satterfield, known as the Gentleman Racer. It's good to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, now, you're originally from California. What brought you to Texas?
Well, my work has had me travel all over the world. I was working in Japan and came back to the U.S. and kind of was disenfranchised with California. Now I end up buying an $800,000 house in a really bad neighborhood. So I thought, I'm going to start looking at other parts of the country. And I finally settled on a few and did some road trips and motorcycle trips across the country, checking out different spots, and just kind of landed here in Central Texas. So
you've always been interested in cars and that kind of racing and that kind of thing?
So it kind of comes from my dad. He worked in the automotive industry. He still does as a consultant with a lot of big automotive companies, mostly interior design and stuff like that. So I always grew up with him bringing home interesting cars, and I bought my first car when I was 14. So
oh my goodness.
Yeah, I kind of got into it really young and buying and selling and flipping cars and stuff like that. So yeah, it's kind of been a lifelong thing for me, and motorsports just kind of is just a bigger part of that.
So what is it you do for a living?
So a couple things. I run thegentlemanracer.com, which is my automotive men's kind of lifestyle website. A lot of car stories, history stories about vehicles, road trips, travel, stuff like that. And then I also have a clothing company, and we do a lot of automotive apparel for different brands, including like Gulf Oil. We've done stuff for Shelby, Lamborghini, and stuff like that. So kind of a design and, storytelling website, I guess.
But you're a journalist as well. You also do a lot of writing?
Yes, I also write for Society Texas magazine. I've contributed to Tailgater magazine and several other publications here in Texas and around the country. Of
course, the whole NASCAR thing sort of been in the news recently, and you actually do some consulting with some folks about it. I mean, that whole noose in the in the garage bay, that sort of just blew up. And It has had a lot of ripple effect, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it definitely catapulted NASCAR into the mainstream press in a way that they probably weren't super excited about.
Oh, yeah, there are memes all over
oh, yeah, it's definitely,
social media.
It's definitely very meme-worthy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually doing some consulting. I do a lot of media and kind of just social media consulting for a lot of different brands, including a few smaller NASCAR teams that just kind of were looking for some guidance on how they should be responding to things like this and, what their involvement should be, and just giving them some advice on that. Because I've been doing media and marketing for over 20 years, specifically in the automotive space.
So I think a lot of people, myself certainly at the top of the list, don't really understand a lot about the whole racing world. There's lots of different types of racing. I mean, the NASCAR, the Indianapolis 500, that kind of stuff. But let's talk about Grand Prix in particular, because and why Groesbeck? I got to get to that first.
So the choice to calling it the Groesbeck Grand Prix is a little more about alliteration than the actual type of racing. The actual event we're holding is a vintage time trial. Which is going to be basically a timed course that has a start and an end point. And we're doing it that way, one, just because the road lends itself to that, because we are closing down a public road in a park to do this. Also, it gives us a great opportunity to show these vintage, really unique cars in motion, which most people don't ever get to see. Like, if you go to a vintage race event, they're usually held out at private tracks like Crescent or down in Houston at the motorsports parks, and not a lot of general public get in to go and see these cars. And some of the cars we have coming are so special. The car that won the Fuji Grand Prix in Japan in 1973 is coming. We've got cars coming from as far away as North Carolina, vintage NASCARs that are coming. So it's going to be a really eclectic mix of great cars. And it's going to be something that most people aren't going to have a chance to ever see. I mean, to see a Chevron B25 and a vintage Ford Fairlane NASCAR running down the same course is going to be pretty special. So we're really excited about it.
So how big a course is this? I'm thinking, now we just sort of had to back off a little bit on our opening of the state. This was an outdoor event, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a 1.5 mile course, so it's just basically it's a public park road that we've gotten permission to close down.
And what park is that?
It's going to be the historic Old Fort Parker Restoration.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty neat place. And
it's a great place to visit anyway.
Oh, yeah, it's so great. And the cool thing is that the whole event is focused on charity and community. And we're bringing together a lot of really neat elements to this event that'll be a little different than most car shows you'd go to or races and things like that.
I've been to those kind of things, and it's fun just to kind of wander around and see the restored vehicles that folks have poured their love and money into. But the opportunity to see them actually race is really kind of cool. My son lives in Florida, and I think this was his kind of midlife thing, but he bought a Porsche 911. 1991.
Yep,
vintage, and he's actually taken it to a track and run it. I think he burned up the clutch doing that.
Sounds about right, yeah.
but anyway, having such a ball with it. So is this that same kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, the cars that are running, they have to be certified race cars. So they're either like Vintage Auto Racing Association approved cars, Sports Car Club of America approved cars, Porsche Owners Club cars. So they have to have all the safety equipment and things that would be required to race on an actual track. And that's just for everyone's safety, because we are running down basically a public road that has trees and things like that. We are running a lot of like hay bales and things like that to make it as safe as possible. And most of the people that are coming, we've talked to them personally, and they all understand this is more of an exhibition type thing. It's going to be fun. Yeah, there are trophies. We have some really cool prizes and things like that to give to the winners who set the best time. But it's more of an experience to kind of inspire that next generation to get into restoring these cars, learning about these cars, because the average age of most of these car owners are 60 plus.
Yeah.
A lot of the events you go to, they're 60, 70 years old. They're cars that they have either owned since the 60s or cars that they always wanted since the 60s, and they finally got to a point they can go out and buy that vintage
they could
car
afford
and
it,
and run it. So it can be a really interesting event, and the cars we have for the car show side are also going to be pretty exciting too. So there's going to be something for everybody. We've got some other really cool artists coming to do some displays and things like that, like live painting exhibitions and things like that. So there's going to be a lot of elements. We're still sorting things out as far as laying out the grounds, because again, with the COVID situation, we don't know how much space we're going to have spacing, how many we're going to have to limit our spectator count to at this point.
So you're not planning to have stands, grandstand to watch, or not? Or
no, it's with the big field.
It's not going to be that kind of
No,
race.
it won't be that kind of race. It'll be more like a festival type atmosphere. The parade grounds there at Fort Parker are a great, huge grassy field. So we're going to have some tents set up for like shade, so people can sit and watch and have food and snack and drink and watch as the cars go by. Inside the fort's where the select cars will be for the Mejia Concours, which is going to be a really cool event as well, which is bringing cars from Pebble Beach quality cars to Central Texas, which is pretty rare. Some of these cars literally are worth millions of dollars. So it's going to be a really cool event to have kind of this contrast of the hardcore raced used cars and then the fully restored pristine cars inside the fort that people are going to be able to see. And our Concours director, Greg Riley, is working with a lot of really great collectors to bring an eclectic mix of cars that kind of show the history, the evolution, the mechanical engineering side of vehicles, how they advanced from the earliest days up to the modern era.
Yeah, educational too, really, for folks. If you're interested in learning more, certainly about racing and, like you say, the history of it, because these are primarily going to be vintage cars.
Yeah, our cutoff is 1985.
Okay, so yeah,
it's
even my son's car would be too modern for
yeah, exactly.
For yours. So how many racers? Let's talk about some of the racers you've got coming. Some names I recognized when I saw your.
Yeah, we have Tex Powell's brother, Mike Powell's coming. He's a NASCAR pit crew manager, worked with AJ Foyt and some of the biggest NASCAR teams. He's bringing his 64 Ford Fairlane NASCAR out. The car raced short track. It won a bunch of races in North Carolina and around the South, and he's bringing that car all the way out from North Carolina. Another North Carolina interested is Todd Morris. He's got a really interesting restored, well, technically it's unrestored, but it's kind of a preservation of a 1960s race car with the updated modern safety stuff. But it's an Austin Healey that was raced all across SCCA up and down the East Coast throughout the 60s and 70s. We have the Chevron B25, which is the car that won in Fuji in Japan in 1973, won the sports car championship there, very significant car. And again, several other MGs and Porsches and Austin Healeys and Fiats and things like that are coming. So it's going to be a really fun event.
Now, I was just general in saying it's in September. Would you have exact dates for this?
Yeah, September 5th and 6th. So
okay,
the first weekend.
First
weekend, yeah.
Well, Labor Day.
Labor Day weekend,
yeah.
It's kind of it worked out really well for us because all the other big races got canceled. So there's a lot of guys who are like, oh, I guess I'll come do this one because it's still happening. So yeah, we're really excited to have those dates and be working with Fort Parker and, again, Limestone County. Everyone has been really supportive of the event in the local community, which going in with something like this as kind of a relatively new transplant to the area, I didn't know how well it would be accepted. So they were really excited to have something different because even like the lady who runs Fort Parker, she was saying like, it's kind of nice to have something that's not like a Civil War reenactment.
Yeah, right. Thank the Lord. Yeah, let's stay away from that if we can.
Yeah,
a little bit. Well, so will folks need to get buy passes, or how are you going to do the spectators?
So we have 2-day passes for both days. They can buy them online at groesbeckgrandprix.com. There's a ticketing section. There's also camping available on site. So if you want to come out and make it a whole weekend, there's on-site tent camping and RV camping. We've got a lot of really kind of cool things set up coming as far as vendors, food vendors, and things like that will be there. So yeah, you can make a whole weekend of it. You can come out for a day. The other kind of fun thing is we have classic car clubs from Dallas, Austin, Houston. They're all planning rallies to come out and drive out in a group to the event, probably on Sunday for the big event, because Saturday's going to be more like testing and passing inspections and all that stuff, and people practicing on the course. And then Sunday they'll be setting their actual trial times for trying to win their category. So we have a lot of car clubs coming out for that day to do these rallies. So you'll see a lot of really interesting cars just in the parking lot, and we've got a special parking section set aside for car clubs too. So,
wow, yeah, a lot of interest though in it, and you mentioned the categories. So, what are the categories? What will they be broken down?
They're mostly divided up by the type of vehicle for displacement. So, if it's like above 2 liter or below 2 liter, as far as the engine displacement, whether it's naturally aspirated or turbocharged, supercharged, things like that. So
you could be speaking Greek to me.
Yeah, it's pretty complicated.
People that understand it know what you're talking about.
Yeah, thankfully, Richard Tomlin, he's our race director.
That is a name I've heard before.
Yeah, I mean, great guy down from Houston. I met him down in Mexico, actually covering some racing events in Mexico. Mm-hmm. He's raced all across Mexico and around the U.S., and he's actually taken the lead on this and put together all the rules and the categories and things like that to make this a safe and cool event as far as the different types of vehicles we're going to end up getting.
Well, it's exciting. I mentioned this to other people, so how's the podcast? Well, I'm going to talk to this guy named Michael Satterfield, and he's going to do this. Wow, that is just so cool. So I don't think it's going to be a hard sell for you. How are you going to be marketing this?
So basically starting in July, I've got a bunch of basically road trips I'm going to be going all around. We got posters getting printed right now.
Good.
We did some really cool vintage race car artwork. Shows Fort Parker in the background. It's got a red sports car, and it's got the giant arrow stuck in the ground. That's the start of the Quaney Parker Trail, which starts there at the fort. So that's actually where our finish line is this giant arrow. So that's why if you look on the website, it says underneath the main logo, "Race to the Arrow," because you start from the end and you end up at this arrow. So it's a pretty cool poster. We've had a lot of good response to it. People really like it. I drew it up the other couple days ago and kind of got it floating around. Got some approval from everybody. It's kind of on our kind of just volunteer board. And yeah, those are getting printed up. We've got some meetings with some other sponsors and things like that. So we're waiting for those to finalize so we can put the logos on it and get them printed. And then I'm basically driving around from, up and down 6 and all over Central Texas, stopping in, handing out posters and talking to people and just kind of spreading the word that way for the local crowd, because we really do want this to be a regional event that draws people in, but we also really want to focus on getting people that are in Limestone County and Waco and the surrounding areas to come out to the event and just have something fun that's kind of a event for this community.
Oh, it just sounds like a blast. Again, this is going to be the first weekend in September, Labor Day weekend, and it starts on the Saturday or
starts on
Friday.
Saturday. You can come out Friday and start camping,
okay.
and you can camp through Monday if you want to.
Okay, so how can folks get more information?
Pretty much everything is on groesbeckgrandprix.com, and it's just Groesbeck Grand Prix, all one word, and there's ticketing information. There's stories on there about some of the particular cars that are coming, some of our sponsors, and some of the cool stuff we have. Like, there's this really great sponsor called Pacto who made us a vintage 1950s racing helmet, which is going to be our overall prize for the winner who gets the best time. And it's beautiful because white and red with our Groesbeck Grand Prix logo on it, and it's handmade. It's a beautiful vintage helmet like Sterling Moss or any of the old racing drivers would have worn back in the day.
Is this something you want to see happen year after year?
Oh yeah, this is definitely going to be a annual event if we can make it happen. Hopefully everything will go smoothly this first year. I mean, throwing COVID in the mix completely just was chaos for us. But everyone seemed really dedicated to making sure it still happened. Our team of volunteers is great. Our charity partner, Drive Towards a Cure, is really, really great.
Tell me about that.
So Drive Towards a Cure was started by Deb Pollock. She's a automotive industry insider. She's been working in the auto industry for years, and she was affected through a friend, but the Parkinson's disease was what they support. And she started this charity where they do rallies. Like right now, they're doing rallies all summer. You can sign up online at drivetowardsacure.com. Or .org, sorry. You can sign up online and you raise funds by driving miles, and it gets matched by Hagerty Insurance, which is a great partner for them. And it raises funds for Parkinson's research. Well, we partnered with her because one of the groups that she works with does research here in Texas through Baylor Scott White and some other local hospitals. So the money that's raised from the event is going to this charity, and that charity is going to redirect those funds to causes here in Texas for research. So it's a really great cause. It keeps the money here in Texas, which we were excited about. We don't have any paid staff. It's all volunteers. So any of the profits are all going to either Drive Towards a Cure or to support the Living History Museum that we're basically hosting the event at Fort Parker, which is going to be very cool. So.
Oh, man, I'm just so delighted to hear about this, Michael. And you can also go to your website, which is thegentlemanracer.com, right?
Yeah, then there's a lot of fun stories and stuff on there, and even more information about Groesbeck Grand Prix.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much, Michael.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Central Texas Living is part of the Rogue Media Network family. Be sure to check out their other shows at roguemedianetwork.com. Please rate us 5 stars on iTunes and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Join us again soon for more Central Texas Living, the podcast.
This has been Rogue Media Network Podcast.